The Cursed Passage. Yusef, a young man in his early 20s, was known for his unwavering bravery and extreme recklessness. Everyone in his neighborhood spoke of him with a mixture of admiration and astonishment. How could someone possess such daring? He feared nothing, or so it seemed. Yusef lived his life seeking challenges, seeing every situation as an opportunity to prove his strength and courage. He always had a phrase he proudly repeated to everyone: "Nothing in this world scares me. I only fear God." But like everyone else, Yusef carried hidden fears deep within. He never allowed himself to think about them, nor did he dare to acknowledge them. The cafe gathering, the beginning of the story. On a cold winter night, Yusef sat with his friends in an old crowded cafe, as he did almost every evening. The cafe was bustling with customers, each table hosting its own unique story. Conversations ranged from work and daily life to strange tales passed around the community. But the discussion that night was different. Salem, one of Yusef's closest friends, began talking about a mysterious place on the outskirts of the old city. Its name was the Cursed Passage. In a hushed voice, as if fearing someone might overhear, Salem said, "Have you guys heard about the Cursed Passage?" One of the friends replied curiously, "What's that passage?" Salem began recounting the tale. "It's an old abandoned place. People say it's haunted. Those who enter either never return or come back, changed. Strange sounds, faces on the walls. Even those who make it back don't remember what happened to them." Yusef, sipping his tea calmly, laughed mockingly. "These are just fairy tales. What do you mean they come back different? I'll go right now and prove to you it's just nonsense." Salem and the others tried to stop him. "Yusef, that place isn't normal. Everyone who went there thought the same, and some disappeared forever." But Yusef wasn't planning to back down. For him, this was a golden opportunity to show his courage once again. "I'll go, film a video, and come back laughing at you," he said confidently, before leaving the cafe, leaving his worried friends behind. Yusef set out on his journey past midnight, carrying a small bag containing a flashlight and a camera to document everything. The streets were eerily empty, and the cold was biting, making his face sting with every gust of wind. The path to the passage wound through deserted, crumbling neighborhoods. The houses looked as though they might collapse at any moment. Bare trees swayed with the wind, producing haunting sounds. With each step, the air seemed to grow heavier, as though the place itself was rejecting him. Finally, he arrived at the entrance. The passage was surrounded by a massive, rusty iron gate. Strange symbols, which Yusef couldn't understand, were carved into it. Shining his flashlight on the gate, he read the inscription aloud. "Warning, enter only if you are prepared to lose yourself." He chuckled and said, "Empty threats." Pushing the gate open, it creaked loudly, the sound resembling a stifled scream. "This is all just exaggerated. A bit of darkness doesn't scare me," he muttered as he walked in confidently. Inside the passage, the darkness was unnaturally thick, as if it actively repelled light. He shone his flashlight, but it barely illuminated a few feet ahead. The walls were coated with a thick layer of mud, covered in scratches that looked like claw marks, left by someone desperately trying to escape. Nothing to be scared of. Just an old place, he told himself, trying to banish the growing unease in his chest. But after a few minutes of walking, things began to change. Faint sounds started to emerge. At first, they were barely audible whispers, but they soon turned into soft, deliberate footsteps coming from behind him. Yusef stopped abruptly and turned his flashlight toward the source of the sound. There was nothing there, but the feeling of being watched clung to him like a shadow. It's just my imagination. Darkness messes with the mind. He muttered under his breath and continued walking. After what felt like hours of walking, Yusef suddenly came upon a strange glass wall. It was completely transparent, yet it reflected his image in an oddly distorted way. He cautiously approached it, studying his reflection. At first it seemed normal, but then he noticed that his reflection wasn't moving as he did. The reflection stood still, staring back with lifeless eyes, and then it began to smile. But it wasn't a normal smile. It was grotesque and sinister. Suddenly the reflection spoke in a voice eerily similar to his own. "Why did you come here? This isn't your place. Now you're one of us." A shiver ran down Yusef's spine. He stepped back, feeling the air grow colder. Desperate, he tried to punch the glass wall, but his hand went through it as if it were water. The wall began to morph into a screen displaying distorted images. He saw fragments of his life, his childhood, his youth, even moments he had forgotten. Then other faces appeared, twisted, tormented faces of people he didn't recognize, screaming silently for help. "What is this?" Yusef shouted, but there was no answer. When the glass wall vanished, Yusef found himself in a circular room, bathed in dim red light. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, telling stories of people who had entered this place and never left. Their shapes were disfigured, their eyes hollow, and their hands reached out as if begging for salvation. At the center of the room stood an enormous, ancient mirror with a rusty metal frame. Its glass was unnaturally clean, glowing faintly as though it were alive. Yusef hesitated but felt compelled to approach. Each step made his heart pound harder, and his breathing became labored. When he finally looked into the mirror, he saw his reflection. At first it seemed normal, but then it began to change. His eyes turned pitch black, his face twisted, and deep wounds appeared across his skin. His mouth stretched unnaturally wide, as if he were screaming silently. "This isn't me," he whispered, but the reflection began to move on its own. Then, to Yusef's horror, the reflection spoke in a deep, menacing voice. "You're just a copy. I'm the real one. Your courage was a lie, and now it's my turn." He stumbled back, but something held his feet in place. Looking down, he saw the floor turning into a black, sticky substance that began pulling him in. "No, this can't be happening," he screamed, struggling to free himself. But the more he fought, the tighter the black substance gripped him. While he struggled, a searing pain shot through his head, as if something was crushing it. He dropped to his knees, unable to scream. As the air seemed to vanish from the room, the mirror changed again, no longer reflecting him but showing horrifying visions. He saw other people trapped in the passage, screaming and running, but there was no escape. The reflection, or whatever entity was inside the mirror, began to step out. It looked exactly like Yusef, but darker, more menacing. "Now, it's my turn," it said calmly, but with a chilling edge. Yusef tried to speak, to ask what it wanted, but before he could, the entity placed its hand on his chest. He felt something being ripped from within him, his soul, his memories, everything that made him who he was.